And welcome to Sugar Talk with diabetes endocrinology consultants and Dr. K. Jean Lucas in the house. Good morning, doctor. How are you?
Good morning. I'm good.
Hope you had a good weekend.
Yes.
All right,
Good.
let's talk about, well, we have been talking about cholesterol and some other things. So what are we talking about today?
Triglycerides, which most people don't understand. When
It
they
usually
see
comes
their,
in the number with the other numbers. So.
it comes in a number, and they just mix it up with cholesterol all the time. So it's sort of a separate fat we're going to talk about today because it's regulated differently, and it is important because a lot of people with diabetes have high triglycerides, and a lot of people that are going to get diabetes have high triglycerides. So it's a marker for insulin resistance and metabolic syndrome.
Okay.
So that's why it's important. But it is another fat. It's separate from cholesterol. It's made of a glycerol, which is like three carbons, like a half of a sugar, and it has fatty acids. Fatty acids, I mean, it's a funny name, fatty, like fatty liver, fatty acids, but it's scientific, so it's not funny.
All right, but does it have a relationship to glucose, or I mean, is it?
Yeah, what it is so you have three fatty acids connected to a glycerol backbone, and what happens when you eat is that the fats that you eat go into these chylomicrons, which are fat blobs, and they get absorbed into your body, and they go through your body just depositing fat different places. So if you have too much fat or too much carbohydrate in your diet, the triglycerides will be more. You'll have more triglycerides made. If you drink alcohol, causes the liver to make more triglycerides. So the things that regulate triglycerides are different than things that increase cholesterol. Cholesterol is increased by saturated fat. Triglycerides are increased by alcohol, by sugars, and by starches. So triglycerides go up like the sugar goes up. If you eat something that makes your blood sugar go up, it'll make your triglycerides go up too. Now, genetically though, you have to be prone to get the high triglycerides. So not everybody with diabetes has high triglycerides, but there are people that have high triglycerides. They're going to end up with type 2 diabetes. They have metabolic syndrome. So part of metabolic syndrome is that you have high triglycerides and low good cholesterol and central weight gain and insulin resistance and that type of thing. So that's metabolic syndrome, which leads to diabetes and heart disease.
I imagine there's a lot of, just like with many of the other things that you talk about, there's a lot of myths and other things that go around surrounding this. Like, for example, I'd heard that if you really want to get your triglycerides down in a hurry, stop eating fruit.
I don't think fruit's the problem around here. I really don't think eating a lot of apples makes a lot of difference. But starches, I mean bread, rice, pasta, potatoes, crackers, cereal, all the starchy foods tend to make your triglycerides go up. I don't think fruit, unless you're eating a lot of sweet fruits like grapes and pineapples and watermelons and things like that, which is pretty much all sugar and no fiber. If you eat a lot of fiber, you're not going to absorb the carbohydrate from the food as fast, so it's not going to make the triglycerides go up as much.
Okay, all right. So, what are some other things? So you mentioned starches. So it sounds like many of the things that we talk about with carbohydrates also make triglycerides go up.
If you have a high triglyceride level, and sometimes it's very high. So normal triglyceride level is under 150. The higher the triglycerides go, the lower the HDL. It's a real complicated system, so I'm not going to try to explain it. But the higher the triglycerides, the lower the good cholesterol with the HDL. And you don't want low good cholesterol. So triglycerides tend to increase your risk of heart disease. But if they go very high, like over 500, you can get pancreatitis. And you can also have strokes from having your blood so thick because of the high triglycerides, because it is a fat. And if you think about the blood, you're drawing somebody's blood and it's white. I mean, that's the triglycerides, the chylomicrons, the things that absorb the fats from the blood. They're increased in the blood. So you spin the blood down and you have a layer of sort of milk and a layer of cream, and that's bad. That's pretty high triglycerides. So triglycerides over 500 can put you at risk for other things besides just heart disease. Put you at risk for your blood being too thick, having strokes, and for pancreatitis.
So again, what are the ways that we get it down?
Well, as usual, the way to get most things corrected is to lose weight if you're overweight. So if you have an increased belly fat, abdominal fat, So if your waistline for women's over 35, and we're talking about belly, measuring your belly, not necessarily your waist, especially in men who wear their pants lower than their belly. So if you measure your belly and you're a man and it's over 40 inches, you need to get that down below 40.
Okay.
So if you've broken the doctor's tape measure because your belly is so big and it's over 60 inches, which is the tape measure only goes to 60, you really need to work on that. And losing weight, of course, we talked about that. If you have abdominal fat, then that's more from being insulin resistant. So you want to cut back on starches and sugars. And you also want to cut back on fats, like bad fats. Fats have a lot of calories. Alcohol has a lot of calories. Alcohol raises your triglycerides and is stored as fat. So alcohol is a problem with calories because people drink, drinking calories, you don't really think about that. Drinking fruit juice will tend to raise your blood sugar and your triglycerides. So a lot of sugar drinks need to be eliminated as well as alcohol if you're trying to lose weight, if you have central weight. So exercise, of course, helps because it helps you lose weight. Cardiovascular exercise helps you use abdominal fat, not sit-ups. So a lot of people feel like, well, they have a big belly, they should do sit-ups. And they may have, more muscle in their abdomen, but you can't tell it because of the fat layer. The fat layer is above and below. So when you try to get rid of the abdominal fat, you need to do cardiovascular exercise. You need to get your pulse rate up and not just lift weights.
Okay, well, what about as far as you mentioned about your diets? Are high fiber diets then? Are those?
Well, high fiber just fills you up more, so you can't eat as much food. Drinking a glass of water before every meal sort of fills up your stomach, and so that you can't eat more if you pay attention. Now, some people don't care if they're full or not; they keep eating. But you want to try to think about what you're eating and think about how full you are, and do you really want to continue to eat. So the main thing with treating triglycerides is to avoid alcohol and to limit starches and sugars in your diet, get your weight under control. If your blood sugar is out of control, it will make your triglycerides go higher too.